Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is for you in the world. I hope it's a good one. What's going on, people? It is time to start a new week. We're going to start it off right with yet another News and React stream. At some point, I'll remember to title these right. I'm not going to bother changing the title now because, well, it doesn't change the VOD title. And the title isn't really wrong about what the fuck it is we're doing right now. It's just not optimal. So, not going to worry about the moment. But I do want to get more optimized titles going on for these streams. You know what? Maybe we will take a moment. Maybe we can just take a quick moment and update this shit. Call it Daily News with Russell Brand. And then like parentheses react. I think that's pretty good. I think that works. Now, alright. We got that keyed up. Now, as I have established at the end of last week, we started a 7 streams for 7 principles of Hermeticism. We've gotten the first 2 out the way. So today is a time for the 3rd principle of Hermeticism. And we're going to go over what that is and a brief description of what that's really about. And then by the time we're done with that, we can roll into the news. I'm sure the news stream will have started and buffered a little bit for us. I gotta mute this thing though. That constant cycling of that little loading bird chirping noise is annoying. Okay, so the 3rd principle of Hermeticism is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. There is no going backwards, there is no standing still. There is only moving forward. And there was no such thing as 100% solid matter. Everything is a constant vibration. It is condensed energy. This one is probably the simplest one to talk about, though not necessarily the simplest one to really understand. So I guess might even mean that it's actually one of the more complicated ones, because what that really means is that it's so difficult to put into easily articulable phrasing that you can't really fathom how you would do it, other than basically what I've already presented to you. Now, the idea is one that's been backed up by modern physics. Both the quantum theory and the particle theory of our reality kind of back this up to a degree. Obviously, the quantum theory more so. Um, that being said, the physical, actual material ramifications are less interesting in my mind than the psychological ramifications. Which is to say, as I have already said, but I'll reiterate one more time, you cannot ever stand still. You must constantly move forward. Time ticks and waits for no man. And as every entity in existence, living and otherwise, vibrates, everything is impacted by the vibrations of everything else. These vibrations travel from one medium to the next. And it speaks to the interconnectedness of all things. But that pretty much marks my presentation for the principle of vibration, the third principle of Hermeticism. Probably my weakest one so far in terms of presentation. But I think it's still was probably able to put enough into words that anybody who wants to think about it and ponder it has something to think about and ponder there. And that's pretty much the baseline goal with this little thing I'm doing, this little series. So that's still a mission success. Hell yeah. All right. And with that, we are about ready for the news. I just gotta double check my settings. We're good. We gotta bring the news back to prior to the buffering. Or not really prior to the buffering, but like not post start. Dude, I might need to get me some coffee or something. I'm having a rough beginning to my morning. I tell you what. I'm gonna tell you what. All right, I think we're set up. Let's get it, boys. Let's get it.
Hey, hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me on Stay Free with Russell Brand. Let me turn off the audio on. Oh, that's what it's like being me. I hear my own voice in my own mind. There's always at least 3 tracks running. For example, someone's got to give this dog a biscuit, haven't they? Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to organise.
I thought it was meant to be the intern.
No. That's I've given him a biscuit, and he says it's malpractice. Someone's got to bring together a set of disparate communities to bring about a global revolution. Someone has got to ask you, our community, will Taiwan be the next Ukraine? Someone's got to tell you, breaking news: Tucker's left Fox. Tucker has left Fox.
Hell
Tucker's
yeah,
not going
boy.
to do Fox anymore. Let's call Tucker.
Dude.
Let us get.
Dude, okay, that's something that we're gonna do. Okay, we are going to go. I don't know if they have intention to do it in this news broadcast here, but it doesn't matter if they are or not, because we're gonna cut to that right now. We have to see this amazing video put out by Tucker. So I think it was actually a live speech he gave. I don't know, but point being, what he says hits home so hard. We're gonna look at it and we're gonna talk about it. Because god damn, boy. God damn, boy. Alright. Check this out. Check this out. Play,
It
goddammit.
might be time to start to reassess the terms we
Alright, hold on. Hold on, we gonna need to up the volume on this one.
use to describe what we're watching. So when I started at Heritage, the presumption was, and this is a very Anglo-American assumption, that the debates we're having are kind of rational debates about the way to get to mutually agreed upon outcomes. Right? So like we all want the country to be more prosperous and free and people to be less oppressed or whatever. And so we're going to argue about tax rates, and I think higher tax gets us there. I'm like Keynesian, and you disagree, you're an Austrian or whatever. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers, and they write their papers, and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me, because I don't have any.
That's funny, by the way. But the self-degradation Episcopalian thing, pretty funny. But I think importantly here, he's saying something that goes contrary to what the mainstream media and mainstream Democratic left are saying these days. Because what you're mostly hearing out of them is that the other side wants to destroy everything. They don't care. You know, they're self-serving asshats, and you know, they're racist and bigots and all this. They're trying to paint the picture that in one whole half of the country is not aimed at the same goal. They don't just disagree about how to get there, but they disagree about where we're going. And you gotta get a decent amount of that out of the right too. I'm not for the right or the left. But my point is, only one of them really is like considers it or tries to present themselves as the voice of the people. Truly, only one of them gets crazy love from the mainstream media, and so you have this divisiveness built into the rhetoric that is anti-productive, and he brings it back to the grounded reality that we're really at. Because the reality is the majority of us, 80% of us at least, want the same things. They want a freer, more prosperous nation. We just disagree about the hows, how to get it done. A little bit of the what's, you know, what it actually means to be free, what it actually means to be prosperous. There's a little bit of a disagreement built into that part too, but it's mostly about the how. How do we get there? I love how he highlights that as the reality. Now he's going to go in to say that it's doesn't seem to be the case anymore, that we're not arguing about the how, and in the mainstream we're not. But the majority of people are still, their disagreements are still just based around the how.
I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever been invented. It's not even a Christian religion at this point, I say with shame. But I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with that mindset. Policy papers don't account for it at all. If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation, let's sexually mutilate children, I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? It has nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could like defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad, well, I think sometimes it's necessary, that's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about like, oh, a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that? And victims of rape, I get it. Of course I understand that, and I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. There's not a society in history that didn't practice human sacrifice. Not one. I checked. Even the Scandinavians, I'm ashamed to say. It wasn't just the Mesoamericans, it was everybody. So, that's what that is. What's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of I would say, widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true, it is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's
Hell yeah, brother. Damn Skippy. I'm gonna go back though. So I won't actually rewind it, but he makes a point about child sacrifice being a thing in all ancient cultures. He doesn't present that part all that well. What he's trying to say there, I'm pretty sure. Obviously, I don't live inside his head. I can't say anything for certain about what he's trying to say. But what I believe he's trying to say there is that he's highlighting that it is a built-in aspect of humanity that we have this primal element that will resort to that kind of behavior in order to appease some underlying motive. So what he's saying is that we have an ever-present threat inside of ourselves and collectively as a culture. We might undergo this kind of behavior. What he's saying, we outgrew that as we became a more civilized, more conscientious society, and yet it is threatening to rear its ugly head once more. And he's saying that if you're having abortion for monetary reasons. Now, I'm not saying he's right or wrong about this, but he's saying if you have an abortion for monetary reasons, you're regressing to primal times and falling prey to base and evil instincts. Which is a very interesting point to choose to articulate, much less in the manner that he chose to articulate it.
It's just true. I'm not calling for a religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not what, and I'm not certainly not backing the Republican Party. I mean, ugh.
Ugh. Indeed.
I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a prayer about it.
Yeah, you can't defeat human motivations in another human being by presenting facts. Because we know as human beings that we do not have all the facts. We will never have all the facts, and nor do we have the cognitive capacity to quickly compute all those facts, even if we did have them. So we don't make decisions based solely off facts. We make decisions based off of feelings. Now, that's said with a very negative connotation most of the time that people say this kind of thing. I don't think it's a negative thing at all. I think human intuition is a very powerful thing. But and it's not, an ultimate authority. It's not always going to lead you 100% in the right direction at all times. It's a powerful tool. It's not an infallible tool. But my point is, you have to appeal to the feelings as much as to the logic. You cannot do one or the other. So marshaling all the facts and presenting an extremely logical argument is not going to convince people that are already strongly juxtaposed to your point of view.
I'm serious. Like, why not? And I'm saying that to you not as some kind of evangelist. I'm literally saying that to you as an Episcopalian. The Samaritans of our time. I'm coming to you from the most humble and lowly theological position you can. I'm literally an Episcopalian, okay? And even I have concluded it might be worth taking just 10 minutes out of your busy schedule to say a prayer for the future. And I hope you will.
Hell yeah, worth the shot. Worth the fucking shot, boys. You can't really fuck anything up by praying. I would advise you that if you're going to pray, do not beg, do not ask, but humbly declare your intent. You don't demand, nor do you ask. You humbly declare your intent when you pray. If you want real results. But that's just my current, belief system. You don't have to subscribe to that. I will say, though, You should take a real listen to what he said in that clip, because he makes some real solid points.
Call
Tucker
him.
on-
You just
with-
left him a voice note.
I know, is this
Bombarding
too keen?
Tucker.
Too keen now for Tucker.
You're
Hold on,
so
he's listened to the voice note. Does it mean they've listened to it if it disappears?
I
Does
don't
it
know.
mean
Has
that's
it gone blue ticks?
We will get you Tucker by the end of this show. By so help me God. We've got, and also exclusively on Rumble. You know, we're on YouTube right now. Well, we won't be in a minute because of the. You know, we love YouTube. YouTube's where our 6.4 million wonders live, and we love every single one of them million. Every one of them million, 6 million, 0.4. We love them, but. We got to go on to Rumble to talk to Lee, Fangs for the memory,
Nice.
Fang, about, and he's breaking a story on our show. So this could be our most important show ever. He's breaking a story, new Pfizer revelations about some Pfizer funding stuff that is going to knock your pants down around your ankles, or possibly if you're in a comical mood, put them on top of your head, no matter what the hygiene consequences of such an action should be. We're talking about institutional corruption. We're talking about nepotism, meaningful nepotism, the kind of nepotism that leads a man, a certain little man called Joseph Jojo Biden, to possibly visit Ukraine
Joseph
to
Jojo
grease
Biden.
the wheels of his son's employment at Burisma, rhymes with charisma, Ukrainian gas company. And this kind of nepotism exists throughout Congress because there's evidence of significant insider trading. Allegedly. Because just before that
Allegedly.
SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank, went down, guess whose kids was selling off their Silicon Valley Bank shares? Or it's one of them other banks, actually. Yes, you guessed it. Elected, paid for politicians that you pay for out of your taxi dollars. So we'll be
Allegedly.
investigating that, as well as getting Tucker on line one and feeding the dog. Lot going on. Okay, hey, look at the way that propaganda works. This is brilliant. You'll see a story like this. This is from the United Kingdom, which is where you get your language and where the Queen, God rest her
Stop watching
soul,
porn on
used to live.
trains. What the fuck? Northern Railway has kindly asked its passengers to stop watching porn on trains. Some people just have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that it's not suitable to watch videos of trains driving into tunnels on public. Wow. You really went there with the phrasing? Okay. Wait until you get home. The railway firm has pleaded to those who search up explicit material and bad language on their Wi-Fi.
Until very recently. This is
And
Northern
bad
Railway
language?
asks
Are you
passengers to
shitting me?
stop watching porn on trains. Now, you might think perfectly reasonable
Sure.
request.
Yep.
Don't watch pornography on a train. Look out the window.
Right.
Maybe make polite conversation.
Yes.
Although actually, I'd rather they did watch porn than talk to me. 'Cause
Maybe read a bit of the mainstream news or something.
I have a look at some mainstream media,
Right.
but I don't like small talk on a train. Do you?
No.
I'd rather that they were engaged in pornography and the likely behavioural activity that accompanies pornography. You know, I'd rather that than talk to someone.
Yeah. Although I think there's people in our what would be Congress in the United States who were doing that in Parliament. I think that's probably
We had
a
people
bit,
in our parliament doing that.
bit
Yeah.
more disrespectful, isn't it?
Well, look, at least they're not in transit, I suppose. They're static in a parliamentary building. But what we want to point out, it's not the puerility
They never leave.
this
They never go
story.
home.
But the fact is, the fact that they'll use something that all of us will
If they actually did work that hard, we might have a better society. But, you know.
agree on. We don't think that people should be watching pornography and engaging in the accompanying onanistic activity to legitimize. Look at the last bit of it. They've advised customers to refrain from searching offensive topics and inappropriate jokes. And stop them from searching explicit material and bad language on their Wi-Fi. So what this will become about is censorship. Now I know this is a frivolous story, but sometimes you can see in a fragment the whole. You can see in a fractal the way that these patterns repeat themselves.
We've talked about this principle already, the principle of congruence. As above, so below. You may find in the micro what you find in the macro, and vice versa.
Let's have a look at the kind of broader corruption that sits at the top of American politics power pyramids in the form of lovely old Joe Biden, who's expected any second now to announce that he's going to be running again, even though mild perambulation for him seems like a challenge. Let's see how the mainstream media are reporting on Joe Biden right now.
his re-election campaign as soon as tomorrow. So if he wins, America's oldest president could stay in office until he's 86 years old, and that may not sit well for a lot of Americans.
According to a new NBC News poll that shows 70% of Americans do not think Mr. Biden should run again, including 51% of Democrats. Now, half of those who say he should not enter the 2024 race cite his age as a major reason why.
Major, minor, not a reason. Not a reason is my favorite category of all of those things. Hey, so oh yeah, this is like a quote on corruption that might be useful to you.
29% of Democrats. Is it of Democrats or of the whole? Okay, no. All right. It's of the whole. It's not of Democrats. The Democrats and Republicans that don't want him to run again. So, out of the 70% of the United States population that does not want him to run again, 29% don't give a fuck that he's so old. Shouts out that 29%. Because it's not really about the age. The age might play in some questions of cognitive capacity, but it's the cognitive capacity that's the issue in that regard, for one. And for two, there are so many even more important reasons. Well, you should probably not want this motherfucker to be the fucking POTUS.
Have a look at this. Like, this is the quote about the broader corruption in this story. Isn't there a Biden corruption headline? Biden campaign, Blinken orchestrated intel letter to discredit Hunter Biden laptop story. That's the former head of the CIA revealed that he was strong-armed by the Biden administration into providing the letter with 50 CIA signatories that was used to underwrite the invalidity of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Have a look at this quote about corruption. Have a look at it. And the so-called political process is a fraud. Our elected officials, like our bureaucratic functionaries, like even our judges, are largely the indentured servants of the commercial interest. Now, this is where
That's such a
story
very strong
about
statement.
a potentially corrupt president. I mean,
Holy shit.
would you let us know in the chat right now if Joe Biden strong-armed the CIA story about
Edward Abbey. Let's fuck. I apologize. Dude, guys, I'm tired, dude. I slept for like 9 hours last night. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. I'm just freaking beat, boys. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Sorry. Edward Abbey is a man who was born in 1927 and died in 1989. He was an American author and essayist noted for his advocacy of environmental issues and criticism of public land policies and an anarchist political views. I don't like that. They kind of made this quote look like it had something to do with that CIA guy, and it does not. That seems a bit intellectually dishonest there, Russell. You shouldn't do that.
a potentially corrupt president? I mean, would you let us know in the chat right now if Joe Biden strong-armed the CIA into delegitimizing the Hunter Biden laptop story? Would you call that corruption? What about the stenographer that says that he heard Joe Biden and Hunter Biden chatting about the deal with Burisma and fracking and stuff? Like, we're starting now to accumulate a story of, if not extraordinary corruption, it's appalling that it's not extraordinary. It's the kind of it's the level of corruption that we accept within American politics, but politics in our country, the UK too. It's an acceptance that really our political leaders are, broadly speaking, serving commercial interests because their personal interests align more with financial, commercial and corporate interests than with the interests of the electorate. Have a look at the SVB story now, and the number of Congress folk who sold shares around the time that banking crisis took place. So have a look at this. On March the 10th, Silicon Valley Bank collapses. On March the 10th, children of Democratic Representative Jared Moskowitz sell shares of Seacoast Banking Corporation worth $65,000 to $150,000 after Mr. Moskowitz attended a bipartisan congressional briefing on the banking tumult. Then the very next day,
3 days later, that is, yeah.
Pardon?
3 days later. Yeah.
Seacoast banking shares fell by nearly 20%. At least 8 members of Congress or their close relatives sold shares of bank stocks in March. Some members were buying bank shares during the volatility. Talk us through this bit, Gareth.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is the case. So, obviously, what was going on at the time, this example of Mr. Moskowitz, is after that congressional briefing, obviously had insider knowledge. I mean, I guess
Hold up.
it's allegedly, but it seems pretty obvious.
You think that during the bipartisan congressional briefing,
You would imagine so.
they went, listen, you'll tell you something, Seacoast Banking, it's going to go
Those
down.
shares are going down.
Sell them.
Right. But obviously it can work the other way as well. So March 17th, Republican Representative Nicole Maliotakis buys shares of New York Community Bancorp after private discussions with New York State bank
Are
regulators.
you suggesting that that conversation with the New York State bank regulators contained information that led Nicole Malatakis to buy those shares, or could it just be a coincidence?
I mean, it could be a huge
He has
coincidence.
a chat with some bank regulators.
Right.
Do you know what that's put me in the mood for? Acquisition of some shares.
That's right. But everyone's selling theirs. Oh, yeah, you're right. It is probably a bit silly.
I'm going to buy some, though,
Yeah.
on another hunch.
Right, another hunch. So 2 days later, New York Community Bancorp.
There's more hunches in Congress than in Notre Dame Cathedral, baby!
Nice.
Thanks.
New York Community Bancorp buys assets belonging to the failed Signature Bank, a deal that prompted its biggest share rally ever.
It never had a bigger one.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether they're buying or selling. They're making all the right choices over there in Congress.
Nepotism and corruption, systemic and institutional. Well, how can we get it up for another 4 years of octogenarian Joe, knowing that it seems at least that he is corrupt, that he used
Allegedly.
deep state facilities to crush a story that could prevent him from winning an election against Donald Trump?
Allegedly.
And that also, furthermore, what's more, that he's getting his son little deals over there in the Ukraine. I mean, if it was Donald Trump, do you think the mainstream media, the NBCs, etc., will be reporting on this more? Do you think they'll be saying, hold on a minute, Donald Trump took Don Jr., our friend over at Rumble, over to Ukraine, got him a gig with Burisma, and he's using the CIA to repress information that could be negative? I mean, isn't Trump...
Oh, I know what broke it. I know what broke my transition. I know what happened here. If I'm right, I've just fixed it. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
right now being hauled through the courts of New York City on the basis of a hush payment that came from potentially legal fees or campaign funding. I know it's a sort of a complex legislative and bureaucratic case, but we all know that whatever they're saying really is to take Trump out of the race. And what I'm saying to you is that whether it's Biden or Trump, as long as the systems and institutions remain as corrupt as they are, and they sit on a bedrock of corruption, because look at that, it's normal. During a 3-year period, nearly a fifth of federal lawmakers or their immediate family bought or sold stocks or other securities that could have been affected by their legislative work. Essentially, insider trading. People in Congress that have
20%,
connections as a
Jesus
result of their
fuck.
job to certain stocks and shares and corporations have been in
20%. Do you realize how fucking huge a number that is? Think about if it was 20% of America. 20% of the states. 1/5 of the states. Out of 50 states, 10 states. 10 whole states worth of people. That's a lot, bro. To say that there's not some deeply ingrained corruption when you got 20% involved in obviously corrupt dealings. What the fuck, boys? What the fuck?
Involved in sales on those very stocks and shares. That means it's deep in the institution, doesn't it, Gareth?
Yeah, it certainly does. And obviously, this is a situation at the moment where, especially with the Biden stuff that's going on, is things are coming out, but there isn't transparency around it. And this occurs at the same time as the Biden administration is poised to increase internet surveillance in response to those Pentagon papers that we have kind of talked about the last week or so, and the Restrict Act that they're bringing. There's all fun ways of censoring and shutting down discussions, shutting down truth, when we're not able to glean any truth from the things that have been going on with them.
Centralising authoritarianism at a time where we do not trust authority at all. We believe in democracy here at Stay Free. Of course we do. Freedom's what we believe in above all else. That's why we've been polling you like it's 1999 with this question. What needs to be stopped first? Lobbyists trading money for government favours, members of Congress owning stocks and shares in the companies that they regulate and legislate for or against, government censorship on free speech. Which of those three things, and I reckon in future we should put A, B, C, and make that look sort of nice and clear, you know, like sort of a clear...
Let's see. I'll give you my order. What needs to be stopped first? I'm gonna go with lobbyists trading money for government favors. Should be stopped first. Followed very closely by government censorship of free speech. And then, still a very big deal, but we could see a little bit of a trailing gap between the first two and members of Congress owning stocks and shares. That would be the third one. It's definitely, you know, a huge avenue of corruption that we need to be concerned about. Absolutely. The lobbying is the biggest deal. Just direct fucking money payments. That's direct fucking monetary compensation for political favor. And that's what lobbying really is. It's got to stop. And then this attack on fucking free speech is horrendous and needs to be dealt with as well. A fucking sap. It's very nearly as big of a deal as the lobbyist stuff. And then again, still a very big deal, but definitely not quite as big as the other two. Use members of Congress owning stocks and shares. At least that's where I stand.
Thing and like look at the language a bit better. ABC, sort of make it very clear. Have we got some polling results on it right now that we can show?
Oh.
Right now, 61% of you are concerned about free speech. Well, that's good because we are on a free speech platform and we got a free speech guest coming up. Later, we're going to be talking to Lee Fang, one of the Twitter file legends, I'm calling him.
Yeah.
Those brave, proud journalists. Did you see Tim Robbins' tweet about this? Tim Robbins, a proud, lifelong Democrat, such a Democrat, let's find that quote, such a proud Democrat that he was openly ridiculed in that film Team America, you know, because he was one of those ones that's always at the forefront lobbying for campaigning. His Rumble interview of us, if you've not seen it yet, you should have a look at the whole thing. It's up on Rumble right now. He did an extremely aggressive tweet. We don't have it physically as a graphic. Give it. Nice one. Thank you very much. Right, listen to what Tim Robbins said. Recently, independent journalists like Matt Taibbi, Schellenberger, and Barry Weiss have all been exposing a massive censorship operation by the US government to control content on social media and eliminate any dissenting voices. Have you read their reporting, or are you listening to the embarrassed, compromised hacks from the media that are covering their tracks? Nice rhyme, Tim. Could be the most important story related to our personal freedoms in the US, and it's being buried. Mainstream media have not only ignored the story, but now attacked the journalists, effectively serving as a thuggish censorship arm of the government. Meanwhile, then a bunch of politicians threatened journalist Matt Taibbi with jail time.
Yep.
What an embarrassing, shameful time for the Democrats and the free, inverted commas, press. You are losing any shred of credibility you had, you effing fools. And by the way, free Assange. So there you go. Tim Robbins. Like, I think what's happening now is that there's a real movement for independence in American politics. Let me know in the chat right now if you agree with this. Like, that there's new emergent voices, even within mainstream politics. Someone like Rand Paul, like a little while ago, Bernie Sanders, people were saying, and like people like, I don't know, Robert Kennedy standing for president. Do you think we should have him on the show, by the way? Because I think we could have him as a guest. Let's get him on. But people were like, oh no, he's anti-vax and all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of other things as well. He's
Is
very
he?
much anti-war.
He's anti-war, he's anti-corruption. He's a
moment.
Kennedy. He's a voice that we need. Isn't he? Is he?
Well, I think we
Let's
should
know in the
talk to
chat,
him.
you lot. Do you want him on? People do. Oh, he is more than anti-vaxxers. Alex Overton window. Yes, says Ginny Phoenix. I think I've got not got good eyes. Right there. But another one of the voices that's taking people to task is Rand Paul. Rand Paul. Like in a minute, we're going to be talking about the pharmaceutical industry very seriously with Lee Fangs for the memory Fang. Right, well, he's going to make a revelation about Pfizer and Pfizer's expenditure that is going to knock you on your bottom. It's going to bend your bones, this one. When you hear about what Pfizer have been doing with their money, it's fascinating. We couldn't say it on YouTube. It's too controversial.
You want to get rid of that tattoo?
Yeah, you're going to be getting
Cover it up.
Get ready for that, getting pinged off your little old body as quick as an ex-wife. Like, I reckon that, you're going to love that story. But let's have a look at Rand Paul exposing, if that's the right word, some of the ludicrous expenditure that the pharmaceutical industry lays out on experiments that I don't think are worth undertaking. Listen to this.
My most recent report uncovered $482 billion in government waste. For example, NIH spent more than $1.1 million to get mice drunk.
So, how much do mice drink? For God's sake, they can really handle their booze, the mice.
Fuck, I was muted, my bad. I'm sure it takes like a thimble full to get a fucking mouse plastered.
Apparently, we're not aware of what happens when you drink too much. $2.3 million to inject 6-month-old beagle puppies with cocaine. Apparently, there's not enough evidence of what happens to humans on cocaine.
So the beagles, they could have sniffed that.
Right.
As well, because injecting it's not an effective. It is effective. I mean, economically effective. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. But I'm talking purely in the context of these scientific experimentations which are taking place that Rand Paul's talking there. The beagles, if you put it on another beagle's bum,
Right.
they would sniff that
Would
up.
that be your way of achieving it?
Well-
If you were, I'm going to say if you were a scientist. Obviously, we all know you are.
In a
one.
way, I am a scientist.
Yeah.
If I was down at the labs, living it up in Wuhan, where we're pretty lax in our lab in Wuhan, I'd go pop a couple of G's on that beagle's body because I got a hunch that some science is going to happen
How
around
much are you
here.
being paid for that? Several
I'm going to need
billion
I want
dollars.
taxpayer dollars for that, whether you like it or not. You don't get to vote.
No.
Mind your own business. Fauci decide what happened with them dollar bills. And let's see what the magical third is. So we've got a drunk mice, coked up beagles. Also, though,
$3 million to watch hamsters fight on steroids.
That's how much you'd be willing to pay to see it.
I mean, which
To
one of
watch.
those? So we've got another.
We're not just testing what happens to fucking hamsters on steroids. We're actually making them fight. What the actual fuck?
Poll for you. We're running two polls simultaneously. What do you want to see more of with your taxpayer dollars? Mice getting drunk, drugged up beagles, even if they're being inefficiently administered intravenously when they could be administered nasally, which I think is how more people do cocaine. Not that I would endorse that,
Drugs are
obviously,
bad.
drugs are bad, and I'm, as you know, drug-free. Or do you want to see some steroided up hamsters brawling? A lot of people are saying roided hamster cage fighting. That's what Rogue Nation's saying. Yeah, I agree.
Almost as if it was well
Some people
spent.
say that's cruel to animals and not to do any of it. That's an interesting perspective. Nearly, I would say, it's not a solid majority. A lot of you are going for the hamsters. A lot of you want to see the little drunk mice, though, to see what they're like. I love you, you're my best mate. I don't know what they're like.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, listen, we're going to flip over now to being exclusively on Rumble because we've got Lee Fang coming up. Now, Lee Fang is one of the Twitter file legends that Tim Robbins vocally advocates for. Lee Fang has been doing actual journalism, revealing the relationship between the deep state and social media organizations. Lee Fang is investigating pharmaceutical companies. Lee Fang is doing what journalists are supposed to do: convey difficult, challenging, truthful information to the rest of us so that we can make informed decisions for ourselves rather than being deluged in untruths, censored to within an inch of our lives, and surveilled all the way to...
Can we move on?
Intro. It's really good to be with you.
Oh, thank you for your humility and your grace, mate. We want to start with the exclusive story. As I understand it, Pfizer are attempting to sort of set up grassroots organisations that are lobbying for COVID vaccine mandates. I'm sure I'm mangling that somewhat, but it sounds like Pfizer are spending money to create apparently authentic voices advocating for vaccine mandates. Is that what's happening, Lee Fang?
Well, look, this story basically takes a look in 2021 when in the United States we had multifaceted mandates, mandates enacted by, I live in California and San Francisco. There were very restrictive mandates here, but, across the country, including the Biden administration in September of 2021, enacted a very kind of strong mandate with no exemption for prior immunity, for, kind of natural immunity or prior infection, natural immunity. And, Pfizer was not playing a kind of visible role here. They didn't comment on any of the articles. They weren't really talking to the press. You saw consumer groups, civil rights groups, patient groups, doctor groups, public health organizations all saying, these mandates are necessary, even though there wasn't a lot of scientific evidence to support the basis that, we needed these mandates, that, they were sold to us with the claim that they would stop transmission of the virus. You had this coalition of community groups saying we need the mandate. Well, I'm taking a look at new disclosures that show that many of those organizations, these third-party organizations with a lot more credibility than a pharmaceutical company with a lot of money to gain, were taking funds from Pfizer while lobbying for these controversial policies. So, I list them out. I talked to a lot of experts. It's a story I just published right before coming onto your show on my Substack.
We're very excited to receive this exclusivity from you, Lee, and at the risk of diminishing your contribution, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. Notably, Pride Faults, who says simply "babe alert," and that's an objectifying comment, I believe, about your physical appearance. But we'll get some more on that. That's going to be coming up. Another exclusive. Lee Fang is sexually attractive. Let's have. There's more of it. Oh, it's getting quite rude now. Stop that. That's enough. Oh, that's made me objective. Yep, it's all happening. So can we have a look at some of the Pfizer lobbying stats? We'll just talk you through this, Lee. It's stuff that you'll obviously know. Can you pull that out for me? Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla is the treasurer of the pharmaceutical lobbying group, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. Pharma spent a total of $140 million, over that, in fact, on lobbying between 2019 and 2022, as well as the pharmaceutical industry being the largest single advertiser on mainstream media. 75% of all their ad revenue comes from the pharmaceutical industry, Lee. So we're talking about an almost immersive omnipotence. They've got power in every direction, as well as it appears as a result of your exclusive there to be investing in apparently organic and authentic voices that are, pro-mandate or pro vaccination. What chance do we have of real democracy? What chance do we have of legitimate open conversations when an organization can exert that much power over that much of the machinery of the state, whether it's media or government itself?
Well, look, the figures you just cited were the ones that have to be disclosed. That's when they hire, a former member of Congress or a staffer to go and wine and dine, a policymaker or regulator. They have to disclose most of that funding, that spending, but so much they don't have to disclose. How much they're spending on television, how much they're spending on TikTok ads, how much they're giving to these front groups or these doctors groups or these public health groups that kind of set the nature of the debate. They kind of appear in the news media, they create events, and they create a discourse that looks authentic, that looks organic. but it benefits the bottom line of their benefactors, of companies like Pfizer. And the vaccine debate is, I think it's fraught. It's interesting because this has shaped our lives in the last 3 years of the pandemic. But it's also not that unique in the sense that every major pharmaceutical company in the United States engages in these practices. They pressure regulators. They spend so much money on direct-to-consumer advertising, and really they kind of just dominate the entire public policy debate. So, we can talk about a lot of other special interest groups, but pharma is unique in just the raw amounts of money they spend to control the entire public sector, on regulatory, on policy, on really everything in terms of how it affects medicine and as it's practiced in the United States.
Li Fang, what specific groups did they fund, mate? Or do any of them stand out as? Does it seem particularly manipulative or deceptive? Or any of the groups that have like legitimacy or authenticity that is surprising?
Well, look, let's just talk about a few of them. In Chicago, there's a very kind of controversial vaccine mandate. There are also discussions about vaccine passports. And a large percentage of the African American, the Black community in that city was not vaccinated in 2021. And one of the oldest African American civil rights groups, the Urban League, Chicago Urban League, went out into the media and was asked, would this mandate hurt the African American community? Would it kind of push them out to the sidelines? And she was very clear in lobbying and pushing back against that, saying, no, it's the mandate's worth it. It's worth it for our community. She never mentioned that, just prior to that interview, a few months prior to the interview, she received a $100,000 check from Pfizer. Not mentioned during the interview, not mentioned on the Urban League's website. It's not disclosed until this morning, until right before appearing on your show. The Consumers League of America, this is another consumer advocacy group that's kind of famous for standing up to corporate power, founded over 100 years ago, fighting against monopolies. They're a group that kind of mysteriously endorsed the mandates in 2021. Again, they received big money from Pfizer and even has a Pfizer lobbyist on its board. These are intricate relationships that aren't disclosed to the people reading these press releases who are getting pressured by these groups. And it's affecting the entire debate. It's affecting how regulators see these issues. And it's also affects how the public sees this. When they see these third-party groups that have some credibility, these are kind of famous organizations that are known for standing up for the public interest. When they're saying, hey, these mandates are a good idea for the American public, it seems genuine. They're just not disclosing the Pfizer money, which I think, is a relevant factor here when you're talking about a policy that compels Americans to take this product.
Yeah, I think that should be at the beginning of the endorsement. I should say African American people should take these vaccines. Also, earlier, a minute ago, actually, I just got $100,000 from Pfizer, who I think they do sell vaccines and they would potentially financially benefit. If it can't be explicit, you can't have democracy. I think what the danger we have now, Lee, is we've reached the point where there's such mass distrust in government, mass distrust and mistrust of media, and there seems to be no...
You know what, boys? I'm gonna have to call it. I'm not doing a good job. I don't need to continue to put out a bad stream. It's not good for me and my self-esteem. It's not. I'm not doing much for anybody else right now. We just need to accept that today is gonna be an L day. We just need to take our L rather than drag it out. Take our L and move on. So with that said, I'm gonna go try to make this day more productive down a different avenue than this stream. I highly recommend continuing on with this news broadcast on your own. It is informative as hell, and you should definitely check it out. But for me, yeah, I'm gonna go do something else because I'm just stuck right now. Like, I just don't have the energy. It just ain't working. I'm just sitting here quietly watching the news while there happens to be a freaking broadcast running off my computer. It ain't nothing. It ain't doing nothing really. Okay, so I hope you all have a beautiful day. I hope life is a journey you need it to be. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.